Hey everybody, and we are live today, 30 minutes later than anticipated, but we wanted to deconflict with some other important events happening in our world. So we've got Nicole Jaramillo on today she's a manager at EY. Thanks for joining us, Nicole.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Yeah, and thanks for being flexible with your time as well. So your background, you were an Army major, right?
Yes, retired in October 16.
Great. Can you tell, how did you get from, what did you do in the Army to manager at EY in the Big Four?
So in the Army, I was in information operations. I started as a intel officer and then went information operations. I did that for 14 years. And when I retired from the Army, I was actually looking at starting my own business, and it wasn't going fast enough for me. And so the recruiters actually reached out to me based on a resume that I had on monster.com and told me that they had this opportunity available working on an Army account. And would I be interested in interviewing? So I jumped on it, right?
Yeah.
To turn down an EY offer to interview. And so I interviewed, enjoyed the interview, talked to a couple of the managers who I ended up working with for a while. And the company called me back in about 3 weeks after the interview, offered me the job, and kind of asked what I wanted to come in, what my pay was that I was going to come in as. And they told me that they were going to bring me in as a senior 3. So not as a manager, but as a senior 3, an experienced hire, and explained the rate that they were going to bring me in at. And the best part was they didn't let me undersell myself. Right? Because as we go through transition, they tell us that we're going to take this $35,000 a year pay cut. And I was stressing. And the recruiter was like, why? What are you making in the Army? We're going in for that. I was like, okay, great. So we went in, and I'm grateful that they put me in as a senior 3, right? Instead of coming in as a manager. So a lot of what we do in the Army as staff officers is advisory work. It's consulting to the commander. However, it's not BD, right? We don't do a lot of business development. We don't understand how to go out and win work and build a contract and sell our services necessarily to other people. And that's a big part as a manager or senior manager of what you need to be able to do in a consulting company like EY or Deloitte or some of even the smaller firms. And so that senior role gave me time to find some mentors, to learn a little bit more about the business and understand the business side of it, because I definitely understood the Army side of it and the change management, consulting, leadership roles. I just didn't understand writing proposals and how to sell services.
So a couple exciting parts about that. One, it's got to feel good to have the Big Four come find you, right? A firm like EY, easily one of the most prestigious consulting firms in the world, reached out and found you. And two, I really like that you had the presence of mind to accept that senior 3 position. And, instead of coming in maybe a little bit over your head, came in at the right level that allowed you to hit the ground running and be demonstrated a high performer right away, right?
Right.
And I think for people, what does a senior 3 mean? Does that mean like your 3rd year as a senior?
Yeah. So I mean, if we look at it from like enlisted ranks, right? Let's talk about it from a specialist or a private PV1, PV2 to a specialist. It's kind of the same concept, right? So the senior 3 is someone who's probably got several years of experience under their belt, maybe doesn't have a very solid consulting background, but you're in your 3rd year as a senior and likely to be looked at for manager promotion, if not that year, then the following year, which is what my case was. Right? I came in mid-year on a cycle, and so they try not to promote in that same year unless they really identify a reason to. But I was quickly promoted, 18 months in the company, and I was promoted to manager. Now I'm sitting in what we call manager 3. So I'm in my 3rd year as a manager with the company, and having those conversations with my consulting family, right? My counseling family on what my next steps look like. How's my promotion going to look like? Am I eligible for it this year? Do I have a business case? And that business case comes down to many of the components that I was just mentioning, right? Not just client-facing work and what I'm doing on the client side, my ability to lead the team, but what am I doing on the business development side? What am I doing internally to help create efficiencies and effectiveness inside of EY and work with the company to improve their services?
And is there a role for them to promote you into, right? There has to be somewhere to go.
Right. Kind of like if we go back to the reserves, right? You can sit in a major slot for years because there's no lieutenant colonel slot at the station that you have to change stations in order to get that next level of promotion. Same kind of concept.
The difference being you can go win work and create a role for yourself.
And create a role for yourself.
Out there as well. So no, that's exciting. So you came in as a senior 3. Within the first year and a half, you're promoted to manager. And I really like how you talked about learning the different things. Like, you knew how to do the work, but you had to learn how to be a consultant and how to navigate this huge firm with over 300,000 people. And there's definitely change there. So I like that. So now, as a manager, like, what do you do what service line are you in?
So they just realigned us, right? So now the people advisory services is aligned with their tax service offering. Not sure how that works.
But your people advisory services, right?
Yes. Huh?
But your people advisory services.
People advisory services, right? So we're the softer side of consulting, right? It's all about the people. It's about building the teams. We look at anything from change management to workforce analytics. We talk about organizational design, organizational culture, and move through that process with the clients so that they can change and improve their efficiencies and effectiveness within their organization, right? Because it all links back to EY's mission of building a better working world.
But when we talk about PAS, it's more than just change management, right?
Right. It's organizational culture,
organizational culture, training,
transformation. Yes.
Yep. Training, communications.
So EY is a little bit different on their communication side, right? So I was brought in as a strategic communications consultant because that's what they needed on the project. But we don't have a strategic communications offering, like service offering. It is nested within inside of change management. So it's understanding that change management is much bigger. It covers much more than just that term change. You've got a training component inside of there. You've got an assessments component inside of there. You've got to be able to do data analytics and understand all of the pieces and components, problem solving, critical thinking, and bring all of that together so that you can create an effective plan for how to help the client and deliver on the services that you're contracted to do.
So what do you do?
I am the change communications and training manager for the client project. Right now, the team is down to about 6 people. We were 14 until just before Christmas. A few people left. We support 2 functions, right? Two client contracts within the role, and we're trying to move the client towards an auditable status.
Right.
And so in that, we're looking at how to standardize business processes and implement they have an organization that's identified the standardized processes, but now we have to help them leverage their cultural tools and processes to implement that standardization across an organization like the Army. No small feat.
No, not at all. So I guess that means you're hiring, right?
We are.
What are you looking for right now, ballpark? I guess we'll throw a little pitch in there. For anybody tuned in that might know someone, they could reach out to you and maybe get a referral. What are you hiring for?
We're looking right now for folks that have Army background, Army experience, particularly in the operational arena, that are able to clearly articulate the benefits of financial management as it relates to the operational execution for commanders. So as we try to create this standardized process out that's auditable, that can get them to a clean opinion, we need folks that can talk to the commander or help us write our content in a way that says, hey, being auditable is important to you because it puts money in your pockets so you can execute your mission.
Right.
And this is how it impacts your mission. This is how it impacts the number of soldiers that you have on the ground with you. It's how it impacts the equipment or upgrading or research and development that goes into executing your mission requirements.
So you're basically looking for people that understand the Army, understand Army operations, understand mission command, and can help write orders, or and basically can get leaders to understand the importance of the audit.
Yes.
Like why it's important for them to know where their money's going.
Yes.
And their equipment and everything else. Interesting. It sounds like some pretty cool roles. So I don't know if I know anybody that would be interested, but if anyone here knows someone that would be interested, I would have them. Can they reach out directly to you, Nicole?
Yes. Yeah, they can hit me up on LinkedIn, or my phone number's on there, my email's on there. They can reach out to me.
Oh, we gotta get you to take your phone number off your LinkedIn, Nicole. We'll talk after this, okay? That's crazy speak. So, but here we got somebody's going to share already, so that's awesome. So,
thank you.
So okay. So let's talk about your day as a manager at EY. I mean, I guess it like just starts at 9 and ends at 5. You get an hour and a half lunch, right? And
you're a riot, Mike.
I think people, it's kind of funny. I think a lot of people think everything's 40 hours a week. And every interview I do, when I mention that, like everybody at the manager level higher just immediately starts cracking up. Like, you're nuts. So let's talk about what's your day like?
Well, let's start with EY's concept of what a profession is, right? So as a consultant, you're not in a job. You're not just going to work. You're in a profession. Mm-hmm. And profession, much like an entrepreneur who's running their own business, you're not sitting at 35 to 40 hours a week. You're sitting somewhere between 50 to 70 hours a week. Because that work includes professional development, includes your personal development. So it's the college classes that you're taking or certifications that you're going out to get. That all counts into your workday and what you're trying to manage around. Client work, 45 hours a week. On those busy weeks, it might be 50, and we all have those. My workday, it depends on what's going on. It might start at 7:30 in the morning. It might start at 9 o'clock in the morning. Much later than 9. And it could end as late as 1900. It depends on what time the client's calling to go over a product.
For those who don't know, that Nicole and I used to work together as of last month, I will tell you that 1900, that 7 p.m. end time is not always correct. There have been times when she's worked later than that. So
okay, we're not trying to scare people.
You're already scaring people when you said 50 to 70, but go ahead. So the expectation from a consulting standpoint, I think I heard you, the expectation from the firm is that as a manager, you're billable, you're working on client work 40 to 45 hours a week, correct?
Yes.
And then you have the other stuff on top, right?
Right. You have to manage what they call your utilization. You've got they've got 2 aspects of utilization that they look at, right? There's your billable utilization, and then there's your full utilization. So building into that full utilization includes things like business development, participating in counseling families, doing professional training and taking courses. All of that logs into hours that they want you to track and put onto your timesheets. Right.
So if you're expected to bill at least 40 hours a week, then you still have everything else you do to get promoted, to grow your business, everything else is on top of that. Plus mandatory training.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Made me feel like I was back in the Army. So so that's really interesting. So when you talk about the other stuff, how much does the other stuff kind of like, how do you balance all of that?
I think it's individual, right?
Right.
It depends on about your approach to things. I find myself doing work wherever I am. If I'm standing in line at the doctor's office waiting for an appointment, I'm doing something. So whether it be a training that needs to get knocked down, participating in a meeting, the beauty of what consulting gives to you, or working with a firm like EY, is that they believe in work-life balance, right? They want you to find what works for you and that's been my experience.
I agree with you. It's just funny that you just said 50 to 70 and then you said they agree with work-life balance. But it's just, there's a disconnection there, but I 100% agree. Like, if you need time
because
off,
we're not locked into 9 to 5, right? If I need to I know that I'm going to take a 2-hour block out of my day to go do something with my kids, take them to a doctor's appointment. I need to take myself to an appointment because that self-care is important. Then I can take that time out and I make it up somewhere else.
Yeah. I get it. And honestly, I think it's no different than what we did in the military. You know, if you wanted to be promoted, you had to do more, right? Like, you had to volunteer for extra duties. You had to take on the harder tasks. You had to look for the harder assignments. You know, you had to do all of that stuff to do more to be promoted. And if you want to, you know, rise to the top of one of these major firms and eventually be a senior manager or partner, managing director, then you've got to put in the extra work and still make all your metrics go. But I do love that you can. You're right though. If I needed to take my son to swim, like, I could just block that off on the calendar and go, and nobody bothered you. So, and I think we've got Shanna said that's a great point about all the extra stuff that your work week incorporates. So let's talk about, and hey, if anybody has questions, please pop in with some questions. So, biggest challenges for you between Army and manager at a firm like EY? Like, what's the biggest differences?
Mike, I don't have one. I have had, in my opinion, one of the smoother transitions. I think the place that I get challenged most doesn't come down to leadership, because leadership in the Army is the same as leadership in an organization. It's about showing up and being there for your people. It's about motivating them to move towards an end state and complete a mission. Where I run into challenges is the difference in the way that we communicate within the military, and direct and blunt, and it's done, and hurting people's feelings on the civilian side. Because sometimes my direct, no nonsense communication gets read the wrong way.
Because they don't expect you to just be honest.
Yeah, but I am.
I've had to have those conversations with people. You know, it's kind of funny. I'm like, no, that she meant what she said. Oh, really? Yeah, there's really into it. Like, she meant what she said.
Yeah, there's nothing in between there. There's no information in between the lines. I say what I mean, and I do what I say. So
yeah. No, I think that's it. But I think that's a good point to understand that not everybody in the private sector is like that. You know, that sometimes it's the exception rather the rule, that sometimes there are other things behind it. One of the great examples I use is when people are transitioning and all these people are like, oh yeah, I got something for you. You know, give me a call when you get closer, or, hey, you're going to be a shoe thing, or you're going to make 6 figures, you know, just give me a call. And, or the contingent offers or whatever. And people think that they got something lined up until the time comes for them to get out, and it's not there.
Yeah.
And I think they don't realize that sometimes out here, people will say something nice, but it means something else. Just because they don't have the heart to tell you, like, no, I don't have anything, or no, you're not qualified. Like, what makes you think that you're qualified right now to be a manager or a senior manager in a Big 4 consulting firm? Like, a lot of them won't say that. Be like, oh yeah, give me a call, send me your resume, whatever. And then it's crickets.
Right.
And I think that's you got to be able to read between the lines sometimes.
So Zach has a question.
Yep.
So Zach's asking if I interviewed for PAS or if I was placed there by the talent manager. So Zach, I did specifically interview for a role within PAS. And so that's where I interviewed at. Sometimes when we're doing interviews, we bring folks in to interview against a service line, because that's who we are bringing to the table to do the interviews. And we'll talk about, yes, they're a good fit for PAS, or no, they should go over to strategy, or maybe they need to go over to risk. And that's decided in the interview process. But more often than not, unless you're a campus recruit, you're going to come in and interview for a specific service line based on your experience.
Yeah, and I think that's what I would agree with that. Like, they're hiring you to fill a role on a contract that's open right now. The only time I could see them making investments into people that are not going to go active on a contract role full time is if they can clearly articulate how they can bring in a big book of business. Like, they have the relationships, they have the knowledge, and they have the experience to win work, and that's hard to do right out of the service. So we've got another question. What are the things that you've done prior to transition that helped the most towards your current position?
So, Kelsey, I never saw the military as my end state, right? I didn't go into my career in the military with it being my end all be all. I knew that I wanted to do something else out after the military, and I wanted it to relate to my academic background, which was in psychology, industrial organizational psychology, management, and leadership. And so I made sure that from the point that I was stationed in Korea in 2004 to 2007, I was sure to start doing networking and talking to folks. And I did a lot of doing and conversations with folks outside of the military to understand what was being looked for outside of the military. About 4 years before I started my transition process, I was doing coaching and consulting with folks leaving the military to help them write their resumes, to help them transition their language about their skill sets inside of the Army to language that paralleled what was going on in the civilian sector. Because the civilian sector doesn't understand what an operations officer is, or what op orders are, or how force protection plays into your skill sets to do critical thinking and decision making. So understanding how to parallel that language and working through the process of seeing what that language is and being realistic and fair to myself about what my skill sets were.
That's a great point. I like it. Hopefully Kelsey gets it. So let's talk about, you can't overemphasize the importance of starting early. So I tell people all the time, they say, how early should they start? And I will tell them 2 to 3 times longer than you think you need. Right. Easily. So
ACAP gives you TAP. What is it? Soldier for Life TAP gives you 2 years, right? You get 24 months. Take 48. If you know that you're on the horizon of getting out, understand what it is you want to do when you get out. Identify those gaps. Know where you are today. Know where you want to be in 5 years or 6 years, and identify what those gaps. What are those it takes so that you can get there?
You just open up a whole nother can. So know where you want to be in 5 to 6 years, right? So your whole military career, everybody's always asking you, what are your short-term and long-term goals, right? 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, 5 years and beyond, right? And you have them throughout your entire career until your transition. And then your goal ends up being get a job. Like, so few people are thinking an aspect of what's their 3 to 5 year plan that extends beyond getting out of the military. And that's why a lot of people have trouble, is they're just looking for a job, and it might not be the right job. In fact, more often than not, it's not the right job, and they don't get to spend 4 years at a firm like EY. They spend 1 year or 6 months or 8 months, and then they're changing again. So that's a great point. But I love it that you brought that up, that 5-year plan. Fantastic. That's the coach in you. So, but all right, we got 5 minutes. Let's get back to day at work. And I hate that I always get to this at the end, but the conversations are so good. So change management, training, communications for an Army project, right? So what is communications? Like, what kind of stuff do you guys do?
We do emails. I mean, sometimes it's writing an email for a client so that they can execute an internal communication. We build PowerPoint slides so that the client is able to brief higher to OSD or to the Army senior leadership about progress and outcomes. We help We make recommendations for responses to requests from query of Congress and what Congress is doing. We assist with pushing communications down to the Army, to the broader organization on how they need to execute activities, helping them develop and facilitating actions for developing plans, O-plans, and writing orders, and doing training events. So we do an annual summit. So
that's training. Hold on, but we'll get to training next. And you also do prep like talking points and speeches and stuff like that as well, right?
Public relations, yes.
Yep. So everything external.
Not everything external. No, we do some internal. I mean, we do quite a bit.
External to the specific client you work with.
Yes. External to the client. Yes, it's going out. Yes.
So getting the message about the auditability for the Army to like the commands up to OSD all over the place, fulfilling the insatiable demand for information on the audit.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So for training, what do you guys do for training? I want people to understand this because you're managing a team of people that are doing this.
Right. So training is a little bit different, right? So when you look at training, you think about training from two perspectives. You look at it from development and that piece of it, which our team does. We leverage the technical expertise that exists across the broader project and the teams that we have there to assist them in developing training that needs to go out for remediating activities. We also do facilitation of training. In the last year, that's gone virtual, right? It moved to a platform. So we help our training team helps the project understand how to do things like lives and whatnot so that we can execute training. And our training team is responsible for the annual summit. So we do this event that encapsulates like a summary of what we've done for the last year, what the focus for the next year is going to be, what those lessons learned are, and then we do 3 to 4 training activities in that summit as well over a couple of days.
And the summit is like an Army level training exercise, basically, with all that goes into planning something like that. So what I gather is that your training role isn't as much of like going out and doing direct training. It's like a training management role.
Yes.
And with other people doing the training, you're making sure it's being done to standard, it's consolidated, that it's reaching the right audience, and that you have the SMEs that basically, if someone has a training issue, question, needs resources, they can come to you guys.
Yes. And we do that all through a knowledge management portal and doing knowledge management.
That was my next question. I heard there was a portal. So that you guys have to uptake with all the information related to everything. So that's fantastic. So we've got communications, we've got training. All right. So now here's the tough one. I know you went to a big picture before, but in reality, like what is change management for what you do?
So what we're doing right now, more specifically for change, is we work with the technical teams, the teams that are aligned with the various elements of the Army to identify key points where they need assistance with communications or training. And we take those points of assistance and we facilitate working groups and activities to help develop what we've labeled our support packages. Right? We assist them with building out talking points, maybe writing an article, reviewing any Army communications that they need to put out, whether it be a memorandum for record, inputs to policy edit. We help them build out training decks. We're moving into a space where we're doing monthly virtual events. Some of them will be training, some of them are discussion boards with the field so that they can ask questions and get those answered. But all of that is centered around changing the business process and working through that end-to-end process so that they're implementing the standardized pieces to be accomplished in order to attain auditability.
I think that's exciting. The way I think I understand what you're saying is that, you've got all these audit experts or technical experts, these people that have been hired for their expertise to help the Army become auditable. And your job in change management is to find out where they're having issues and then try to help them get beyond that, help them move the needle.
It's taking the technical knowledge and making it tactical, right?
Okay.
talk about it from an Army perspective, let's talk about it that way. There's all these technical experts. It's this technical knowledge that they have and the skill set that they bring to make it tactical so that it can actually be operationalized, implemented, and executed.
So how do you track success?
We're working on that one. There's different things, right? We look at measures of performance. We look at the task execution. Are we getting done what we need to do in the manner in which we need to do it by the timeline that's designated by the client? Check, yes. Now, the question becomes, how effective are those tasks and those activities towards actually moving the needle and helping them accomplish what they want to accomplish? And it's nebulous, right? Because it's not clear as to, okay, you have to do these 5 things to get to auditability, because it's not that simple, right? Audit is okay, I'm going to come in and check these things, and these 5 people might have it right, and these 3 people don't. And so, but changing that only broadens the scope of what they're testing next time. And so now it's the unknown that comes back and bites you in the butt. And so now you've got to work on that unknown piece and get that fixed. So every little mile marker comes down to, okay, are we decreasing the number of notices and findings that take place? How many things have we been able to remediate this year? What kind of new findings do we have? And where have we implemented and what have we done that has successfully identified risk to the Army?
Yeah. I like it. So, seeing where you engage and see if you can track the metrics, the success points to show that what your team has done has been beneficial, move the needle on making the Army better. So, Nicole, we're over 30 minutes. I don't think I've ever gotten one below 30 minutes on this one. So, I guess what I would say is thank you for spending your afternoon with us today. I really appreciate it. I know how busy you are. And I would also add to anybody out there, if you tuned in late, keep in mind that Nicole is hiring. So, if you have an interest, you heard what her team does. What are the education or certification requirements for those roles?
Master's in accounting, finance, or MBA in business. And I think it's 4 years of financial management experience.
Which can be articulated as anything.
Right. It's
if you with money, inventory, or a bachelor's degree in a PMP, right?
No, the roles that we're hiring for, the ones we have open are all masters.
Okay.
Yeah, PMP, CPA, those certifications also work for what we're hiring for, but
yeah,
be a minimum of a master's.
Okay. Well, good thing there's a lot of people that are highly educated, service members, veterans, and military spouses out there. Yes. And hopefully we can get a few people in the right role. Absolutely. So reach out to Nicole if you are interested. And Nicole, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.
This is a lot of fun. This will go on the Hire Military YouTube channel for anybody to see. All right. Have a great day.
Take care.